And last but definitely not least, I'd like to introduce Ingrid Lestrade from Goedgedacht, a non-profit organization. Goedgedacht, for those who don't know, means good thoughts. It's an organization that's sponsored by ESCOM. One of the sponsors is ESCOM. The flagship program for Goedgedacht is Pathway Out of Poverty. An incredible project working with rural children on the farms in the Western Cape, where there's high rates of alcoholism, high rates of illiteracy, high rates of young people who are getting pregnant far too early, not going to school. How are you helping these young people?
Well, when we started, about 95% of the children on the farms where we worked dropped out of school, primary school, between the first 2 to 3 years of primary school, and landed back on the farms illiterate and semi-literate, becoming a general farm laborer. And we also noticed that at the age of 11, 12, 13, young girls would fall pregnant and land back into the cycle. So what we thought of doing is that when you do a single project, a sewing project or youth project or a women's group in a community where there's nothing else, it becomes very difficult to make even the smallest dent in poverty. So what we found was generational rural cycles of poverty. And what we thought of doing is developing a program instead of a project. So that's why it's called Path Out of Poverty. And the idea is it's a very long-term program. It's 25 years long. So we take the children from zero, so we work with the pregnant mothers, with trying to prevent more and more babies being born with fetal alcohol spectrum disease, as it's been called now, previously fetal alcohol syndrome, and also try and reduce the number of children who are born malnourished as well. So we start from there and then stay with the child, acting as the parent for the next 25 years. And we've been going on for 15 years. And we saw that there's a reduction. We've only had 6 children, teenage girls, falling pregnant in the last 15 years, which we never foresee would happen. And we also don't see more young people being lying drunk on the streets like their parents. They still drink, but they drink responsibly. But I think the key thing that we have done is that we said that in order to make a real dent in poverty, we have to do whatever it takes to keep rural children in school for as long as possible. So we say that do whatever it takes. It's really where I myself, I dive in the mud after children, running after them, putting them in the bucket, taking them back to school. We also discovered that a lot of the children at the age of 2, their teeth rot. And their speech don't develop. So their confidence levels are very low. And what we've discovered is that many of those children don't have any toothbrushes in their houses. And those who have share toothbrushes with 12 other people. So as a result of that, they can just never escape the cycles of generational rural poverty. So how we got involved in terms of, we can't do this alone. So what we liked about the partnership with ESCOM Foundation was that they understood that in order to run a 25-year-long program, no funder will stay with you for that long. So they invested in our self-sustainability program, which is where we grow olive trees. Now, never ask social workers to do agriculture, because it takes forever. So we started growing olive trees, and we planted year by year, and the aim of it is to try and get one child being supported by one tree out of poverty for the next 25 years, because olive trees can bear fruit forever. In Jerusalem, there are trees over 2,000 years old. So so that's what we try and do.
Wow. Let's talk about how many young people in the last 15 years have been able to complete school and go on and study further.
At first, what we did was just to try and get children to stay and get through primary school to high school. So then they managed to get to high school, and now we've produced 40 children who have matriculated. I know it's not a big number, but in a community where nobody else went to school before these children, it was quite significant. And
think about it. I mean, if 95% of these community members are dropping out of school in primary school, and now you've got 40 kids who are finishing matric,
yeah,
and some have gone on to
and
masters.
100% of them are employed. So, and what's interesting was that the kind of matric marks that we've been getting now, you must understand these are fetal alcohol syndrome children, malnourished children, children who don't have toothbrushes, who don't have toilets, some still today. And this year we have one of those children finishing teaching at the University of Kaput, I call it. We also have the very first one being accepted into the University of Stellenbosch to study teaching next year. So slowly but surely, our children are starting to stay in school, finishing school, and getting to a point where they are getting good enough marks to enter the university levels.
The program has 4 pillars. Can you describe those for us, please?
The first one is education. Now, it's not education in the academic sense. It's education in trying to find ways in which we can support children to stay in school, go to tertiary level, and become self-sufficient. So we say we do whatever it takes, whether it's diving in the mud. We have, at our pop youth centers, we've got shower facilities. We teach children how to wash their own clothes so that they don't stink, because many of them stay in houses where they make wooden fires and cook on wooden fires, so they smell of smoke. And one of the main reasons what we found why children are dropping out of school is because of that humiliation that they face at school, because nobody wants to play with you if you stink, let alone if you're a teenager and you don't have any toiletries. Nobody would want to be your friend. So those are all of the very simple reasons that we found why children are dropping out of school, which can be so easily addressed. So the first one is to keep them in school for as long as possible and do whatever it takes. The second one is the health component, where we try and get the children to have a decent meal for the next 25 years. So every time they come to the centers, they get fed. Also to teach them in the holiday programs, every holiday program, I've got to stand there with a toothbrush, teaching hundreds of children how to brush teeth. So all the basic stuff around health and talking about sexual activities and so forth, and creating that safe space to do that. The third component is personal development, recognizing that these children grow up in houses where there are no chairs, there are no tables, there aren't people sitting around the table talking. And that's how, if you think about your own backgrounds and how you grew up, that's how you formulate words. And these children don't have the vocabulary. So if you talk about young people coming from these backgrounds, trying to compete in the job market, it's almost impossible for them to ever advance through it. So one of the things that we do is to teach personal development. Also what we've discovered is that a lot of them, children who grow up in poverty, they can't dream, they can't imagine things. Now, I have to sit with 25-year-old young people who have never heard the Little Red Riding Hood story before, the Three Bears story before. And all those stories have helped us to develop our own imagination and develop our own dreams and so forth. So it's that basic. And then the fourth component that we work on is the care for the planet, the environmental side of things. So what we say is that even though all of the children that we work with are poor in one way or the other, we all have a contribution to make to our environment and looking after our planet. And one of the main factors in the areas where we work in is looking after our water, closing the taps. And if we don't teach the children to do that, then we're just wasting a very, very scarce resource. So those are the four pillars. It's education, health, personal development, and care for the planet.
You also expose them to the world beyond the farms where they live, right? They get a chance to travel. Sometimes it's a big deal if you stay on a farm to see Cape Town as a young child. What does that do for them?
It's just absolutely incredible. Some of the stories that I remember taking, we had a UK school group coming to visit on the farm. Now this was in August, and of course it was summer in the UK and winter here. So the UK school group raised money to take our children to the beach in the middle of winter. And I thought, oh, honestly, it's so freezing cold. But nevertheless, we went in 2 buses. We went to the Strand. And as the bus stopped, all these children just ran after each other into the water, the first time at the sea, not realizing that the water gets deeper and deeper and deeper. So we all had to run after them to make sure that they don't drown. And then another story was that we took them to Century City, which is a big shopping mall in Cape Town. And there's, of course, a lot of escalators in the mall. And our children were so scared. And up until today, every time we go to the cinema, because the cinema, you've got to go up the escalator in order to get there, there are just groups of children being so scared, not knowing where those steps are going and whether they will be trapped into it. And also just simple things like a lift. I took them also to the cinema, and there were 5 boys just watching, because in Century City you've got these glass lifts, and these boys were just watching the people getting in, going up, then more people coming in, coming down, and after about watching this for 30 minutes, they said, Ingrid, how much does it cost to go on there? So it's just broadening their mindsets and exposing them to things that we take for granted because we just go on it and don't think that there are a large majority of children who have never ever experienced that in their entire lives.
Wow. You've opened 3 youth centres in the Western Cape, and you've got plans to expand as well.
Yes.
Please tell us about that.
Well, now that we've developed this model over a period of 15 years, and we're not big talkers about the work that we do, so this is very nerve-wracking, sitting here and talking about the work, but thanks to ESCOM, I'm here. But after we've developed this model, we said that if it seems to be working in a very small area with 32 farms, then let's try and see if it works in other rural communities, because in South Africa you won't find very successful rural development models that have lasted very long, longer than 5 years or 6 years if you're lucky. So we've started replicating this model, and by the way, this model is being evaluated by the World Health Organization and the International Labour Organization, and it mirrors almost exactly what they put together in a period of 10 years with a whole lot of experts coming up with a model for community-based rehabilitation matrix, that's what they call it. So this mirrors almost exactly what a whole lot of experts were doing. So we've just got funding now to build another centre in Prince Albert in the Karoo, and we also will be building in Portable and Piketberg, and we're working with the Department of Rural Development to expand and build 8 pop centres in the Eastern Cape. But before I die, I would really like to see these pop centres popping up everywhere, in every little rural community where it's almost impossible to see anything happening because nobody wants to be there, because there's no disco club and no attractive thing, no shopping mall and so forth. So, but really just to come back in terms of ESCOM is really one of the few funders who understood that nature of maybe they can't support everything, because this is it's got 22 different projects in it, in the whole program. So it's got sports projects, it's got various health projects in it, home-based care, etc., etc. And maybe they couldn't support the whole thing, and one funder can't support the whole thing, because it is an expensive exercise if you think about the fact that if you have children, how expensive that costs you, even after the child becomes a major. After 18 years, you still continue to support that child. And that's how expensive it's going to be for South Africa to actually rehabilitate the kind of children and young people that we would want to see enter into the job market and so forth. And ESCOM understood that the best way that they could support this whole initiative is to support the self-sustainability part and to say that even though that doesn't sound so attractive as feeding children, we understand that in order for you to continue to feed children in many more rural communities, we've got to support you planting more olive trees. So they've planted 5 hectares, which is 2,750 trees on Goedgedacht, which means that 2,750 children will benefit for the next 25 years from their olive trees, and after they become self-sufficient, the next lot of 2,750 children will benefit from it.
These olive farms, of course, these olive farms produce products that we can go and buy at the shopping center. You're making olives, you're making olive oil, you're making salad dressing, locally produced. Where can we get them, and what is the name of the brand? Last question.
The name of the brand is Goedgedacht. So when you go to any Pick n Pay store in the country, you can look for the Goedgedacht products. And then we're also talking to, I just heard today, we were talking to Woolworths, but I heard today that it is available here in Gauteng, in Woolworths as well. And then we're talking to ShopRite at the moment. So we're just trying to sell in as many shops as possible. And if you ever do come and visit the Cape, you're more than welcome to come and see the project and also come and give us some critical feedback, because we don't know it all and we would like to learn. And this has been a wonderful experience where it's not the normal kind of environment where I find myself in on a daily basis, but the kind of ideas that came out in the various sessions was just so refreshing. And there's a lot that I'm going to take back from this conference. So thank you very much to
Ladies and gentlemen, Ingrid Lestrade.